muted. Good evening, folks. I'll try that again. Good evening, folks. Welcome to the stream. I hope everybody's well. I've had a bit of a long week, so I'm a little tired, but it's okay. I'm here. I guess channel catch up. It took you 10 minutes to download. You don't have fancy broadband. It's been a little bit of a busy week, so yeah, everything's a little bit nuts. But as channel sort of stuff goes, what's in the pipeline at the moment is I am now officially reviewing hardware. I know I'm a numpty. I'm out of practice, but I'm going to be reviewing hardware. I've already started. I'm about a page and a half in on the script for it. And there's a long way to go with this one, I think. It's one of those films that can seem quite light in some respects, in terms of what it's trying to do. It seems like a very simple film, but I think there's a lot more going on with it than initially sort of meets the eye. So I'm looking forward to really kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of various bits of the movie. It's kind of interesting. Going for that Ming the Merciless look. Well, it's been there for a while. It's been there since November. When I had this done, one of the lecturers says, "Oh yeah, I'm glad you kept that though." Oh dear. Hardware with my favourite band's vocalist in it, Carl McCoy. Okay. Still need a Japanese laser disc of hardware. I'd love to have laser discs. I was always fascinated by laser discs. They are quite a beautiful piece of media, looking wise. You know, I remember when I first saw them, it was like, oh my god, that looks space age. That does, you know what I mean? It's I got criticised for it. It was like, oh, space age has been a while ago. But it's just a euphemism. It's fine. We calm down. Richard Stanley clocked up 4 movies, including the one he was sacked from. His documentaries are good. Yes, I showed the documentary on Dr. Moreau last week, which was the other week. Which was it's a hell of a documentary. If you ever get to see it, chance to see it, go watch it. Go get it on Blu-ray. In fact, it's very entertaining. But surprised you're doing Richard Stanley. I assume because of the allegations that were against it, which apparently have gone nowhere. The last I heard, he was suing for defamation. And I've heard a lot of counter arguments against it as well. So, don't know. Got 3 copies of hardware on DVD and Blu-ray. Blu-ray one is called Mark 13. Yes. It's a really interesting film. There's a lot going on in it. Plus the music's fantastic. In fact, on the strength of that, because you can't get hold of the soundtrack very easy, I'm starting to collect the soundtrack in various ways. I've not ever really had any Ministry in my collection before, so I've been listening to a bit of that literally just before the stream started, which might be while I'm a little discombobulated because it's kind of nutty. Had no idea about the allegations, saying more surprised by the fact you're actually doing hardware. I don't know why you'd be surprised at that. It's an interesting film. Yeah, I don't want to say too much because I'm sort of getting into it with the review and stuff. But watched Lost Souls documentary last night. It's over on Blu-ray. As missed this the other week. Great documentary about the doomed production of that film. It is fascinating. Hardware was based on a 2000 AD story, but they didn't give them credit, so they got sued. I'm assuming it's Strontium Dog, Simon. Would that be right? Because quite frankly, that was one of the ones that sprung to my mind. I'm going to have to get some digital copies of the old 2000 AD if they're around. Would like to reread some of that. It's been donkey's years since I've seen 2000 AD. They settled out of court for peanuts with 2000 AD. Dear oh dear. Yeah. Other bit of news. After I've done hardware, I will be doing another Jess Franco on Eugenie de Sade. The Franco files seem to be doing incredibly well just lately, so why the hell not? Enough people seem to want to watch them. But Eugenie de Sade will be the next one. So that should be pretty good fun to do. I did pick up, as I promised, some more Schwarzenegger. So I got Commando and Red Heat. So I will be watching that, although I had a little bit of an issue with the playback on that one when I had a brief look at it yesterday. Not Strontium Dog. Okay. I'm wondering which one it is. It does have that 2000 AD vibe to it. But it has a vibe of a lot of movies, to be honest with you. Which is something I will be discussing in the review. But a lot of 2000 AD was that sort of post-apocalyptic sort of hellscape landscapes, wasn't it? It was a lot of that kind of stuff. Be it Judge Dredd and Strontium Dog and all those various others. Yeah, but that's an interesting piece of information. I shall have to look that up and see if it says which one it was. Because I did get that 2000 AD vibe to it. Death Machine starring Brad Dourif was essentially a remake of Hardware on a large scale. There's the scale of it is actually quite interesting as movies go. There's a lot of world building in that particular movie, but it's very hurried along. You've got the opening, and then it's the bit where kind of like the parts are exchanged in the shop, and then he goes home. There's not a lot outside of that because most of the film is in that apartment, and that's pretty much it. I imagine that was partly a budgetary concern, apart from anything else. But it kind of works in the same way that Alien works, being in a small area. But yeah, it was based on a story called Shock. Okay, interesting. I might pick your brains about that at some point, Simon. But yeah, so tonight we are going to be watching Let's Scare Jessica to Death. Now, I hadn't watched this before. I had watched it now. I'm gonna watch it again. But it's an interesting little film. It's a very low key, for the most part, movie that is very heavily psychological. So it's absolutely in my wheelhouse. It might not be to everybody's taste. It is very slow, I do warn you. It's not massively long. It's about an hour and a half long. I think it's just over an hour and a half long. But it's going to be a fascinating one to have a look at, and I'm actually going to be interested to see what my reaction is to my second watch. In fact, my second watch... did I watch it earlier? Yeah, I watched it earlier today. So, yeah. So... For the time being, just get everybody get yourselves ready. There are links down below for like rentals and purchase. If it's rental, it's about £3.50. I think if you're buying it, it's about £6 or £7 or something like that. We'll give it a few minutes anyway, just for everybody to get on board. I did get this posted nice and early, so everybody had a little bit of a chance. But I appreciate not everybody, manages to catch the information for these streams as early as they do, and I will try to do better with bring your own media ones and try and give you a few days notice or a week's notice, probably via Facebook or something like that, or whatever. I don't know. We will figure this out. It's very casual here, isn't it? I just introduce you to this thing. This is Skippy. So cool because it was a dumpster save. I did put a post of it on Facebook, but basically this thing was right busted up, and I fixed it up. Isn't it gorgeous? Look at that. It was going in a skip. My God. The electrics were hanging out. The neck was bent. So I've upgraded and replaced the electrics and straightened the neck on the thing. So now it's actually playable. Still needs a bit of tinkering, and it weighs a bloody ton. But it's a Harley Benton, which is not a particularly well-known make. I'm having to bring all my guitars home because I'm losing my office at work. So I've got another bass. I've got 3 bass guitars actually, funny enough, and a Les Paul. 2 of which are at work. So I've got another bass here, bass over there, bass at work, and the Les Paul. So I've got to bring them home and try and find a little bit of room. You have some Harley Benton pedals yourself. Oh, very nice. I don't have any pedals now. I tend to play through the computer just because I don't have enough room for like a full setup or anything like that. I mean, speaking of which, there's this Rocksmith. I play Rocksmith a fair amount, which is just a really, really great fun game. It's Guitar Hero, but with like real guitars. So you get to, it shows you how to play the songs and all that kind of stuff, for those who don't know. And I was looking at the Rocksmith Plus thing, which is like the replacement, like the the new version, which is supposed to supersede Rocksmith 2014. And it's like, I was just looking at it, going, oh, it looks great, And then I saw the subscription price, because it's subscription only. It's about 115 quid a year to subscribe to it. 115 quid. Fuck me. Yeah, it's ridiculously expensive. So I'm not terribly happy about that. Oh dear. So Simon, let us know when you're ready. And I assume everybody else is just going to be kind of more or less sort of ready to go whenever, which would be good. But I have seen no Kerry today. I imagine she's probably busy. 150 quid for guitar lessons. You could look at it that way, I guess. I mean, I use it as a... It just seems like an awful lot, because you imagine you buy the original Rocksmith, like even the original 2014, and you were paying, when it came out, about 70 quid, and there's like a couple hundred songs on there. Now you got Rocksmith Plus, it's like, nah. It's not. You'd be playing those previous games for years as well. You'd be buying some DLC and stuff. But yeah, it's ridiculous. It's a bit ridiculous. It's very, very expensive. I don't know. It will take some persuading to get me on board with it. I almost signed up for 3 months, which is like, they got a special offer on. It's like 30 quid for the first 3 months or something like that. But then it goes up to 40 quid for every 3 months. It's like, really? Okay, or 45 quid. Just gets a bit daft. I don't like the subscription culture, especially with games and stuff. It gets a bit mad, and the auto renewal, especially with something like that expensive, is a little bit crazy. Rocksmith 2014 has been delisted. It's Ubisoft delisted it from Steam. I can still get to my copy on Steam, obviously, because I bought it. And it's a shame that people can't get hold of it. It's a real shame. The only way you can really play it now is you get a second-hand copy. But you can't do that on Steam, obviously. I don't know if there were ever physical copies on the PC. I guess there must have been. But it's a great game. I love it. And there's some fantastic music. And you can still, at this point, buy the DLC as well, which I thought was going to actually go away. Pretty against subscription stuff, would just prefer to buy something permanently. So would I. I think there could be a subscription as a extra thing on there, but you should have the option just to buy the music and buy the game, in my opinion. The idea that they can just force you to keep paying or lose it seems a bit crap, because that's what's going to happen. Basically, this is the worst thing about it. When your subscription runs out, you've got nothing. You won't be able to play any of the stuff ever again, and if it ever goes away, that service goes away, that's it, that's all gone. All your progress is gone, everything's gone on it. It's a pretty shitty way to kind of have to deal with. Especially as a retro gamer, the idea that games now will just go away. A lot of the games will not ever be recoverable, and that's a real shame. You won't be able to play them in 20 years' time, like you can the PS2 games. Which yeah. I've got to treat myself to a night of just playing PlayStation 1 and 2 games at some point. Not found too much time for myself for that one, but yeah, it's all good. I love my bass. It's couldn't believe I've thrown it out. It's a £250 worth of guitar. That's not particularly cheap for a bass guitar. The other one I've got over here, I'm going to show you quickly. I think I might have shown you that before. You might have seen it before. So my Tanglewood Rebel 4K. That's a cheaper guitar. I think those went for about £150 odd, something like that. So that's a more expensive guitar. But I love this one. The reason I bothered with it is just because that's all layered wood and stuff like that. It's just really, really nice. It's got a natural kind of matte finish to it. It's a very pretty guitar. Weighs a fucking ton though. Simon still transferring to a USB. Okie dokie. But what I will say is, in the meantime, if you have got your copy, get it queued up, ready to go at this point, and hopefully we won't be too much longer, and we all get started. I've been trying to get hold of some of Richard Stanley's other stuff as well, but some of it's quite expensive. I think the copy of Dust Devil I was going to get, it's not. I couldn't find it at a reasonable price. I did rewatch The Colour Out of Space, which was very entertaining. Simon wouldn't like it because it's Nick Cage. But there's some really cool stuff out there. Let me just make sure that everything's still running. This is interesting. Yeah, it seems all right. Okay, so I had a bit of a moment there. Seem to have lost all my pages. Let's just close a couple of those tabs. There we go. Fantastic. We are back on that. Hello, Kieran. Hope you're well, mate. So not many pickups this week, but I've got, I am looking forward to watching Commando again because I haven't watched it in a very long time. The last time I owned that particular film was I had it on VHS. And I remember the British version, I think, was very, very heavily cut. So I'm going to be interested to see what's going on with that one. Seeing you show off your guitars got me thinking about Tommy Ken Russell Who movie. Randomly thought it was quite an assault on the senses. So I think the people who have watched it, most people seem to like. I've not seen it. So I don't know. It would be interesting to watch it, I guess. It would be interesting to watch it. I'm a big fan of Pink Floyd's The Wall, so why not? I can't say I can't watch that because I don't know why is all singing in musicals. And my opinion of musicals has changed radically over the last 20 years. I used to be dead set against them, and I started working in theatres and stuff, and then started appreciating the film versions of them. It's not to say that I like every musical, because there's plenty of musicals which are utter trash. Same as any genre in many respects, but there's some great ones as well. Little Shop of Horrors is a great one. Rocky Horror is a great one. Shock Treatment's a great one. The Wall. Would you consider that a musical? Sort of, yeah. Yeah, or a rock opera, I guess. Uh, Minor cuts on Commando, but the shed scene is a lot more brutal. Yes, yeah, I seem to remember. I don't know if I've seen the full cut of that, but somebody gets scalped or something with a flying cutting blade or something. I did watch the extras on it, which is quite fun. Only thing cut from Commando was Arnie chopping someone's arm off with a machete when he comes out of the tool shed. Yeah, okay. I thought it was trimmed for the circular saw blade as well. I could be wrong. But how you doing, Simon? Are you ready to go, mate? So tonight's film, it has to be said. I don't know if I should give some kind of. I know it always sounds a bit funny when you say it, but this is a film that deals with mental health. So if there's and basically a descent into potential madness and that kind of stuff. So if that's a problem for anyone, this film is quite potent in that respect. So just be aware of that. Commando is a hilarious movie, not in the iconic sense, but in the genuine sense. Yeah, it is incredibly over the top, isn't it? Hello, John. Sword blade and machete. Yeah, it was pretty brutal. I mean, that's the thing. Raw Deal. When I watched that, it was like I was actually surprised how brutal some of that was. You know, it has its cheesy moments and all that kind of stuff, but when it's kind of doing a bit of craziness, it really does go for it. Axe in the knackers, if I remember rightly. Yeah, I don't think that was terribly explicit though, was it? It was more kind of like, ooh, yeah, right in the fun yard. Commando the musical spoof is funny. I'd never heard of that. Oh dear. Pitchfork, second saw blade, axe and arm cut off, extended with 3 added shots for each kill. That's about it. Okay. Okay. I'm still looking forward to it though. Yep, Simon's ready to go. Fantastic. Okay. If everybody could just give me a thumbs up when you're ready, and we'll get started with Let's Scare Jessica to Death. Still waiting for an uncut Cobra. I would watch it. I nearly bought Cobra the other day. The DVD was a little bit too expensive for my taste for a movie that I know I'm sort of a little bit hot and cold on. If I can find it at a reasonable price and a reasonable edition, I will go for it. Commando, the house management simulator in the middle of nowhere, and has Alyssa Milano. Okay. Commando is great fun. Yep, fantastic, brilliant. Righto, okay, we will get started then. So, usual shtick, we will go on the count of 3 and we will go on the word go. So, stand by, folks, and we're going to go on 3, 2, 1, go. I'm watching on a Amazon Prime, by the way. They should pretty much run the same. Now, that's an old Paramount logo. I do warn you, there's a lot of sort of voices in the head sort of stuff goes on in this. It is barely audible. So if you prefer, put subtitles on or something. It's quite a beautiful shot for the opening. And a very succinct warm-up for the movie. Newt was telling me that he used to work with the guy that produced this, which is kind of interesting. Now, for a guy that makes the kind of movies he does, he's got quite an extensive contacts list, shall we say. Hello, Gary. Good to see you, mate. Now, this is one of those things with this movie that there are some very heavy themes within this. Not overplayed or anything necessarily, but there's a lot of themes of death, which just come backwards and forwards. Seems to be a central concern of the POV character. When you've had this opening, which is her voice narrating where she's at, and then it has the wibbly wobbly kind of like reverse in time. It does suggest that the movie is intended entirely to be her point of view. She is the point of view character very solidly. Watching from California. Oh, very nice. California, interesting state and great Mr. Bongo album. Ah, okay, Simon. IMDb Commando was cut by US Ratings Board. Most of the shed scene UK release also cut their machete lopping off the soldier's arm. See, this whole kind of thing, there's always these voices. Some of them are almost subliminal, they're that quiet. And it can be very hard to actually understand what it is they're saying. Now, I think that is partly by design, that it sort of, you can hear that there's something there, but you're not necessarily quite sure what they're doing. So you might be ruining it by watching the intention by watching with subtitles and stuff. That's got the director's cut on it, so. It is kind of funny that they're sort of driving around in a hearse, isn't it? It's like they can't even blame it on Ghostbusters. Yes, he did. He's worked with him on several occasions, as far as I'm aware, Kieran. I know he's had his troubles in the past, but I do genuinely like the guy. So I think he has, a good amount of talent. Controversial as that may seem. Not the old Bishop place. There's almost a deliverance kind of thing going on. Just these unfriendly locals. One of the wonderful things with this film is how the peripheral characters are as much as the central characters. The more I think about this film, the more I like it. To be honest, I mean, it'd be nice to do a review on it one day. And it's the sort of film that a lot of people just won't have much patience for these days, unfortunately. Finally watched the Rocky series. Yeah, probably the last person I know to see him. Better late than never. Yeah, it sort of is a bit of a downhill trek. Rocky 3 is a hell of a lot of fun, but it is absolutely batshit crazy, and it's so jingoistic, it's unreal. But probably more relevant now than it has been for a long time. I mean, the film, yeah, visually has that classic kind of 70s sort of feel to it. In terms of the kind of color palette, I was reading something about this actually. So why do films from this era look like they do? And it was down to a specific um, Kodak film stock, apparently. I'll be getting this on Blu-ray or DVD at some point. It is such a good film. Director's cut Rocky Four Sly, cut out the robot wasp. It was one of the jump into shark moments, wasn't it? And just weird as well. It's such a bizarre element to the film. It had no kind of point or anything, but I can understand why he did it. Because Rocky Four, at the end of the day, although it's not as earnestly a good film as maybe the first three, it's still trying to do stuff. I tend to look at it as being almost like the Rambo Last Blood of the first four. I want to know who bought that robot in the auction in Rocky. I mean, it got more and more ludicrous, didn't it? But as it went along. See, there's a weird cadence in this movie to kind of when we get the little thoughts. There are just moments where her inner monologue kind of pops out of nowhere. It's quite okay, right? Where did that come from? Oh, it's an intruder, and I thought it was imaginary, but I'm so glad that it's real. But even a moment like that, which is yeah, almost comedy. She's like, I'm so glad there's an actual intruder in the house, and it's not her imagination playing tricks. And it says a lot about the character. So we're getting a lot of information about her. You know, her kind of state of mind, her fears, all those kind of things. All that's going on. It's been a very busy 10 minutes in that respect. But the pacing of the film is very slow and deliberate. It's not throwing it all at you really really quickly. Yeah, Neil, that's actually kind of an interesting thing. And if it was COVID again, I'd probably be sat there kind of like with reprocessing all my astrophotography data. Which, by the time this finishes, I might actually put my Sea Star out and see if I can get a few photos. Rambo 3 villain is hilariously camp. Yes. Um, Rambo 3 was a bit of a funny film, to say the least. It's very unfortunate. Well, there's not too many of those jump scares in this film. I think the central performance with Jessica is actually incredibly good. There's always something about her that she's always a little bit on edge, but she's always putting on this false front. And I think overall the performance is pretty damn good in this. Everything seems to fit. Gianetto De Rossi did the effects in Rambo 3. He went from Emmanuel in America to that. That is an interesting shift. Yeah, John, I think that's a good point. I would have loved in the later Rocky movies, Paulie still had the robot. I rewatched Rambo 3 probably about 3 years ago. Yeah, it is a bit funny. It is intentionally a lot lighter hearted. And then, of course, we went on to the current iterations, like John Rambo and Rambo Last Blood, the more modern editions. It's a shame the last one was not a terribly good film. I didn't really play very well. Clearly not playing the guitar. It's always a big mistake in any shooting, is if you person can't play the guitar, don't show their hands on it. Even if they couldn't learn the piece, if they know how to play a little bit of guitar, at least they can make it look convincing. That really is a nitpick. Hippies in a hearse, yes. Still need to see Borman's certified epic, yes. It's. I don't think it's necessarily about. I don't think it's a bad film. It's just probably not a good Exorcist film. Oh, you saw that in cinema. Oh, cool. I did actually find my quad of The Exorcist. Uh, don't know where I've put it at the moment, but I dug that out. So I might be putting that up on the wall behind me or something. Blood, blood, blood. Interesting bit of diegetic music there. I don't think it was Absolute Toilet. It's just not a good Exorcist movie. It's an interesting film otherwise. Um, Borman is a fascinating director in so many ways. Uh, and I don't think The Exorcist 2 is a bad movie per se. It's just it shouldn't have been an Exorcist series film. It's like Zardoz. A lot of people didn't get, didn't really sort of click with Zardoz. He has a peculiar style to his movies. See, it's like this shot of her, of Jessica reacting to what Emily is saying in this. There's always this kind of like, it's like a just smile. It's okay. Don't look like you're about to freak out. I mean, the mental state of the character is actually quite fascinating throughout this, and because it is so heavily POV. I mean, this is absolutely a psychological movie. Yeah, the story, everything about this film, what we see and what we hear, is coloured by that character's interpretation of things. Um, I think there was real issues getting a director for a second Exorcist. He didn't want to do it, but they really sort of had to persuade him to do it. The Exorcist should not have been a series at all, but part two is awful on almost every level. Yeah, I mean, I disagree with it being a bad film per se, but just a bad Exorcist film. The third Exorcist film is outstanding in my opinion. There was the prequel ones, which was basically the same movie made twice by two different directors, and they feel very different. They're not terribly well made, but they are films that have obviously suffered at the hands of interference and incompleteness. Borman has a script for Lord of the Rings. It fell through and he ended up doing Excalibur. Oh, really? Okay. In Borman's Lord of the Rings, Frodo has sex with Galadriel. I think it's because they wanted to change some things up, probably. I think that was part of the point. Like I get why I didn't like it, but I wasn't a fan of Simon towards Borman and two in general. I mean, at the end of the day, if you didn't like it, you didn't like it. I can understand that. I personally, with The Exorcist 2, see a lot of stuff which is kind of worthwhile. It's just not as an Exorcist series. So almost completely, the original creatives involved with The Exorcist totally disowned it before it even got off the ground. So when it came to Exorcist 3, that's really Exorcist 2, if you're thinking in terms of the writer and his opinion. See, it depends which version you saw, Neil, because there's two versions of it. One with the exorcism and what's the director's cut, which doesn't have that. The exorcism scene in it was jammed in, to say the least. Fair enough. Fair enough, MD. I mean, if you're after an Exorcist 2 as an actual sequel, then yeah, probably anyone but Borman would have made a better job, because he didn't want to make an Exorcist movie. He just made a movie he wanted to make, which just happened to be kind of twisted in that direction. When you watch movies with differing cuts, do you watch them back to back or do you space out time between the cuts? Depends on what I'm doing. If I'm watching them for review purposes, I might watch them within a day or two of each other. Um, Say like when I was doing Dawn of the Dead and stuff like that, I watched about 3 or 4 different versions of the film. Might have even been 5 different versions of the film, to be fair. What an auteur that Borman, yes. He is, actually. I mean, you can tell a Borman film. So this is something I discuss in the hardware review, is just a brief kind of discussion of what auteur actually is. Because people think it's a sign of quality, you know. Oh, if you're a great director, you're an auteur. It's like, that's not really, strictly speaking, what it's about. Technically, Michael Bay's an auteur. You can tell a Michael Bay film a mile off. It looks and feels like a Michael Bay film, although ironically his style was very heavily influenced by other directors in the action genre a generation before him. So one of the interesting things about this film is how the other characters sort of regard her mental health issues in the past. They're very um, understanding and sympathetic about it, which is something that, you know, I think it's quite an important take on it. Looking forward to that hardware review. I think many misuse or to use its fancy buzzword to hype up someone. Yes, yeah, a lot of people do. I mean, for me, auteur just basically means a filmmaker who's capable of making films that have their style and stamp on it. So you've got, like, you know, the David Lynch's of the world. Yeah, you can always tell a David Lynch film. So on and so forth. Even with the wildly different ones like Inland Empire and so on, compared to something like Blue Velvet or whatever. But it does apply to people who make films that are very obviously there. So whatever you think of Harmony Korine, for instance, he's an auteur. You can always tell a Harmony Korine film. They have their style and their look and their approach to filmmaking, which is notably unique. To an extent, although I would say to a limited extent, Kieran, but yeah. I think it's harder to isolate with someone like Uwe Boll what exactly it is about his filmmakings that makes those uniquely him, in anything other than a qualitative sort of sense. Yeah, Godfrey Ho. Yeah, you could argue that, absolutely. God, you can tell it's the 70s, can't you? I mean, it has to be said, this is really nicely shot. There are some really nice camera angles used, and this whole thing with the body coming up through the water is really cleverly done. Gary Marshall, yeah. Had a chat with Michael Winner. Didn't consider myself an author, but if you write, produce, edit, and direct, you would you get paid 4 times. And it's fair enough, and it probably makes your life a lot simpler because you're not competing with several other creatives on that front. He was a very utilitarian filmmaker in some respects. Certainly towards the end, the latter half of his career. My God, that handlebar moustache, yeah, this is definitely the 70s, man. Is she there? Is she not there? There's that voiceover kicking in again. Typical countryside diet. Michael Winner got heavily criticised for writing in his newspaper column, did you know for 25 quid you can drive in the bus lane? He was an interesting character, was Michael Winner. Love him or hate him, I don't think he was boring. Death Wish 3 is hilarious. I would absolutely agree. I think most of the latter Death Wish just became more and more funny. It's just as Paul Kersey gets older and older and older, and more of his family get raped and murdered. It's every fucking movie. It's like, I mean, once is bad, but several times is probably careless. And it's just the people he's with are getting older with him until he's like moving into an old folks home, more or less, and it's, I do remember the game for Death Wish 3. I really did enjoy that back in the day. I did get the later Death Wish films on digital because I wasn't really that worried about having it on my shelf or nothing, but I watched them. Did I do one with Barry? I think I did a podcast with Barry, if I remember right, on Death Wish. We talked about the various movies. See if that we planned it. Well, the first two Death Wish were highly controversial. I mean, especially the first one, and you can kind of understand why the first one was controversial. But it's interesting because I did that summer season reviews, and the Death Wish and Falling Down. I covered both of those as a comparative study, which was interesting to do because you got a kind of more left wing and a more right wing. Right wing being much more Death Wish, and then Falling Down a much more left leaning kind of view of gun crime and the whole sort of vigilante kind of thing. Death Wish 1 was really a drama, wasn't really an action film. No, because it was a much more thoughtful film in many respects. I disagree with a lot of the conclusions that the film comes to or suggests, but it is an interesting one. That's very true, Kieran. There are suggestions to this film, there's sort of supernatural overtones, but you can't quite figure out whether or not it's actually that at this point, or if she's just losing her mind, or if somebody is messing with her. And that's one of the things about this film. There is this constant question about the reliability of the narrator in this film. That being Jessica, obviously. That was actually used as a point of criticism against the film. That the film was kind of gaslighting the character, and it's not really the case, I don't think. I can understand why somebody would feel aggrieved in some respect from a certain point of view. Why that could be quite offensive to someone, but I don't think that's what the film is doing. Waiting for a summer season critique of Days of Heaven and Next Friday. I'm not doing another one, to be honest with you, because I put a lot of work into the previous one, and there were some great films like The Man Who Fell to Earth and that kind of stuff. But it's a little outside the wheelhouse of the channel, and nobody watched. Nobody watched any of them. Because I did Holy Motors as well, which is a very highly recommendable film. It's a wonderful, wonderful film. It's one of my favourites. And none of those reviews got hardly any looks, so it just didn't jive with the rest of the channel. If I was going to do them again, I would have to do it as probably on a separate channel, which would start to get a bit ludicrous workload wise. If I was doing it full time, I would definitely do it, but yeah, nobody's going to pay me that kind of money. I do like the actress in this. She does kind of like have this slightly over the top sort of delivery, just a little bit, not crazy much, but it's kind of she's put an effort into it, and it actually adds to the character. I think IMDb pointed out that these are all cockerels and there's no hens. So maybe that's a part of the mystery. Honestly, I love the Knight Riders critique. Yes, I really enjoyed that. It is such a wonderful, wonderful film. It's Knight Riders. Definitely a underappreciated George Romero, because I think it is right up there with his best. Absolutely. That story is beautiful. Tear jerking, even. Anthropophagus was only shot on 16mm, so not sure if 4K HD will offer much over 1080p. Yeah, yeah. It's one that you got to consider I mean, 4K, if you've got a really massive TV, is kind of, there's function to that. Friendly locals. There is a genuine creepiness to this film, it has to be said. It's like some of it's kind of turned up a bit, but other bits are not. There's a lot going on with the vibe in the film, and like I said, because it is so tightly tied into the character's POV, you've really been taken along with a kind of like mental ebb and flow along the film. If you've got a massive screen, it does make a bit of a does make a difference. But I mean, you are talking about big screens, really. Some people feel very differently to it. I've never really felt much need, well, especially since I've got like 27-inch monitors. You know, it's like 1080p is not bad for this size. So when you get to 8K and stuff like that, you know, it's like. But honestly, I don't think 8K will take off. 4K, you know, there is some functionality to it, even if it's minimal. Mm. 4K release of Absurd. Wow. I do like 88 films. It's just in case you want to project your film onto the moon, Kieran. I mean, when you get to the super high resolution, it's great if you want to kind of like blow the picture up and zoom in on something, I guess. But there might be some, shall we say, perfect pause functionality to something like that. Probably not my kind of thing, but you know, to each their own. There's stuff I've got in my collection which is not everybody's kind of thing. This film in particular is one that's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Um, Although funny enough, you know, this is the rare one of the rare occasions where I give, you know, any kind of trigger warning is like with a film like this, because for me I find it quite powerful when talking about the way it talks about kind of various aspects of mental health, because I imagine there's some people that would resonate with. I've got a few 4K DVDs and Blu-rays, I should say, um, but mostly that's just because you know there's a the regular version on it as well. Prefer my bootleg VHS of Texas Chainsaw Massacre over the 4K restoration. Um, it is one of those films that can benefit from a lo-fi vibe. You like the vibe of it personally, yeah. Nightmare City, yes, it's a little bit off, but it's kind of fun. This is obviously more of a psychological horror, very much so. That'd be a very accurate description of what this is. Well, you see the size of some of the screens these days when you get like 36, 42, 50 inch and above. It's like, yeah, I can see the functionality of 4K, although it's arguable that it's gonna work with a screen of that size, or at least you'll get the benefit of it. But considering how big screens are and how small most people's places are, especially in Britain as opposed to America, but even in American living rooms, there's probably not room for an 8-foot screen, particularly. Judging from how he holds the fishing hook, it looks like he was going to hit someone with it. That's Garden of Eden stuff. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I don't have room for like any way to set up like a massive surround system and all that kind of stuff. That is not a mole. From what I understand, they just couldn't find a mole, so they put that in there. And 4K Star was a George filleting his bad writing and carbons. Yes. God, it's hard to read on that. CGI effects. Yes. Yes, it is a mouse, Simon. Apparently, they just couldn't find a mole. It's not surprising. They're actually hard to find, but no, it probably wouldn't. Even with a 27-inch screen, it's 4K is not going to do a lot. Kind of Surprises from 71 feels like a movie from much later. I don't know. The pacing and everything does yell 1970s to me, and the kind of story that it's telling is feels much older to me. But there was a sort of return to much more psychological kind of stuff, but I don't think it did as well. Film, storytelling in films has changed so much since this era. Everything has to be a lot faster, a lot punchier, generally speaking. Which is why I always found films like Hereditary and Midsummer quite an interesting thing, because they are a return to this kind of storytelling. In the face of a lot of horrors where it's emulating the 80s, but a lot more brutal in some respects, or at least has a much stronger focus on certain things like Saw and that kind of stuff. I did get a response from Nick Palumbo at one point to one of my reviews. I did not like the film, but he seems like a fairly gracious guy. Cool. I think even Umberto Lenzi would have thought that was a bit much without that zooming. She really does sell how fragile she is in this scene. Wait, that's no hallucination. After her. The best modern horror pastiches have their own voice and don't resort to needless cameos. Yes. Once in a while, I don't mind a little bit of a cameo, but I find it does break me from the film. I think if you've got enough about your film, you don't need to have them. I mean, like Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead had so many cameos in it. It was like, why? You know. Yeah, you're probably right, Kieran. I think Lindsay's horror films, with the exception probably of Man from Deep River, um, tended to be a little bit more meal tickety. Your stream crashed, Neil. Timestamp: we are currently on 48 minutes and 20 seconds. Soundtrack reminds me of Anthropophagus. Yeah, it does have a little bit of it. But the movie does take time to, with the soundtrack to really kind of calm things down because it's not constant music. Dawn of the Dead remake was pretty pants. um, I think it's a lot less remarkable than some people think it is. It's not awful, but it's not great either, particularly. The opening's good. Simon liked the Dawn remake, and that's absolutely fair enough, mate. It always suffered, I think, from comparison to the original for me. Um, as a standalone movie, it would have been probably more interesting. There were some interesting things in there. Um, I didn't in the later part of the film. There was some of the camera work I didn't particularly like. Kind of the color grading got a bit weird, but on the whole, it was just not nearly as charming as the original. Yeah, don't bother with the Day remake. The Dawn remake, yeah, give it a watch. It's fine if you can get hold of it cheap enough. I wouldn't spend a whole bunch of money on it. It is interesting though, isn't it, with the soundtrack of this? There are moments where it's almost this sort of um, kind of tinnitus sort of thing going on. Like I said, because it's such a heavily psychologically tilted film. Um, a lot of this soundtrack is kind of, you can infer that it's her to some extent. So whatever the music's doing is very very heavily related to her mood, her feeling, her thoughts. You get that sort of sounds as opposed to music, I guess. Um, it like that sort of tinnitusy sort of thing, and there's this sense of uncomfortableness, unease, sickness almost. That's kind of cast upon the character from it. They never made Dusk of the Dead. Well, they were going to call the Land of the Dead Twilight of the Dead at one point, as I understand it. Never a huge fan of the original Crazy, so the remake doesn't enamor me. The remake's actually very good. It's one of those I kind of go, actually, it was a worthwhile remake. I still love and prefer the original, but the remake is actually really good as well. At least in my opinion. Because it tried to do a few things different, and it was a different style to the filmmaking. Yeah. And it's sufficiently different in terms of kind of how it runs and how the story is, and what the point of the film is, that it made it, just about worthwhile. Mid-morning of the dead. Yeah. Lunchtime of the dead. Or how about brunch of the dead? She has a natural intensity to this performance that is sometimes a little bit scary in its own right. The Crazies feels somewhat overlooked in Romero's filmography, even though it's almost as influential, I feel, as his Dead films. Hazmat Guys, especially being an influence on Resident Evil, Umbrella, Mercs. Yeah. I think it is a very impactful film. It is an interesting one. Again, it's kind of George Romero doing the microcosm thing, which he's always been very, very good at. A small group of people representing a larger community. And that's one of the things that makes Night Riders work so well. There was breakfast at Manchester Morgue. I've tried to watch Bruiser in the past and I've never quite managed to get my hands on it. I can't remember if I watched it a long time ago on VHS or not. Not the Mole Slash Mouse. Yeah, thanks, man. If anyone was in any doubt who you actually are. Bing Rames. Yes, the Day of the Dead remake was absolutely awful. Yeah, I'm going to have to see if I can get hold of Bruiser, because it's... Oh, okay. I may get that later. There seems to be a version of it out now, Simon. Just found one on Amazon. She's just a little moments like, I didn't do it, I didn't do it, I didn't do it, and she delivers that fucking line so well. There is some really nice photography in this. I think, generally speaking, the cinematography is really good, as is the editing, especially the sound editing. There's always Vanilla and Season of the Witch are the last two Romero films I need to see. Season of the Witch is a bit of an odd one. I don't. Some people really like it. I wasn't a massive fan the first time I saw it. I would have to watch it again to really sort of get a better opinion of it. But George Romero himself didn't really think that much of the film, from what I understand. I think it was a gun for hire type movie. Very much like There's Always Vanilla. He's never thought much of There's Always Vanilla. He didn't really care much for it. What was it? The Amusement Park, which is the info movie. That's an interesting one to see. That's a really solidly built loft, yes it is. Yeah, John Rennie got me a copy of the Amusement Park for my birthday, which is really sweet of him. Um, I'd like to spend a night out with John again because it's been a while. He's not around work so much these days. He's kind of doing a lot of other stuff. At least I don't see him around as much. But the guy in the green shirt looks like the crazy guy from Equinox. God, I haven't watched that in a little while. Great film though, very enjoyable. Some relationship challenges in this one, yes there are. But yeah, the sexual tension in this, yes, there is a bit of that. There's a lot of things going on with this film. She's got a little bit of the Shelley Duvall thing going on, hasn't she? I can't say I really sort of in my head when looking at this film, gone down the line of the more kind of sexual aspects of the film. But yeah, I think you're right. It is there. There is this sort of thing going on between these two characters to some degree. But she's also, Emily is also a kind of ambiguous character, and you're not quite sure who she is or if she's doing something. Was this sold as a gay panic film? I don't think so. No, that's as far as I'm aware. I hardly really watch anything, even my favourite movies. I'm always on the lookout for new films. Yeah, people are a bit, some people watch films multiple times, like I will. Other people will watch one film and then go on. I've always found value in watching a film several times. If it's a good film, you will get so much more out of it. It's like Eraserhead, as a for instance. You watch it one, yes, there's all the visual aspects which you can enjoy and that kind of stuff. It's very hard to piece together from one viewing. And I've always found every time I've watched Eraserhead, I've found it a much more rich experience on each occasion. Which is part of the reason why I do. Plus, there's some films I just enjoy watching again and again. Dawn of the Dead, the original, being one of them. I've watched that film. Haven't any idea how many times. It's probably about 30 odd times. I think the chat on screen's frozen, isn't it? Oh, maybe not. There we go. Do double bills of the Dead trilogy films and remakes. Just one version of each, so not taking a fortnight out of my schedule. My mum and my brother have in the past done extended editions of the Lord of the Rings athons. That's a pretty full day's viewing. I love how she portrays this character in some respects, because it's like this moment. You say, no, 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 just get away, and she's right on the edge of going, and there's always that edge to her performance where you think she might just flip, in a kind of self defense way. Schedule. I mean, some people say schedule, don't they? But I'd say schedule. Does Glenn say tomato or tomato? Tomato. British. Welcome to the English language, Kieran. It's a bit all fucked up and stuff. And we love it. I mean, you're welcome to your opinion. I think you're very wrong if you think Lynch is overrated. But there you go. That must have been uncomfortable running through the field barefoot. Thing is, I can understand why some people would not enjoy David Lynch. Um, I think he's one of those filmmakers. People sometimes appreciate him for visual style. Some people appreciate him for the kind of um, overall storytelling. Um, but it can be quite alienating if you're not sort of given necessarily to a more um, surreal kind of approach, or at least that kind of wildly eccentric sort of take into storytelling. No idea on that one. And I'll have failed it 50 times, Kieran. I make no claims to perfection, but I'm very close. Elephant Man and Blue Velvet are quite excellent other films. Meh. No, I mean, I have a massive love of Inland Empire and Mulholland Drive. Eraserhead, obviously. Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. The whole Twin Peaks thing in general is just fascinating. Not that I would say any of it's necessarily perfect, because I don't think there are perfect films, but um, they're quite compelling. He rarely talks about his films in terms of what they mean. Certainly Eraserhead, very cagey about discussing Eraserhead. Well, Mulholland Drive feels much more down the line of something like Twin Peaks. Is probably a good guideline for what the film's like. It was, I believe, supposed to be. I think it was supposed to be something like an Audrey Horne spin off at one point. Then they kind of changed their mind on it. It was going to be a TV series. So the film is basically like an expanded version of the original. What was the what was going to be a pilot episode? No movie is perfect. I tell her not to keep it fancy. Yes. His fans can be rabid. It can be very difficult sometimes. I understand passion, but sometimes it goes into psychosis. For the most part, Kubrick talking about Kubrick's films is incredibly fascinating. even when you get like wildly different versions. But when it starts slipping into um, real life conspiracy theories and all that kind of stuff, you've lost me. I wouldn't say it could be boring, but I mean, he does take his time with his stories. I mean, pacing is very much part of the uh, texture of the film. Like with this one, it's a very slow film for an hour and a half odd long. It's a very leisurely paced film. Things happen, but they're usually very small things for a very long time. Kubrick was highly autistic, and it shows. That's a possibility. I mean, he was very detail orientated, and that's why people have this idea that he planned absolutely everything. But filmmaking's a chaotic process in many respects. There's so many people involved, and so many things you got to keep track of and watch. Uh, that it's impossible really to make a film that is without any error. Yes, the idea that that like in The Shining, the shadow of the helicopter is deliberate is just such a misnomer. It's a complete misunderstanding of filmmaking in general. Um, love Kubrick personally. 2001 Full Metal Jacket especially. Yeah, yeah. I mean, 2001's a very interesting film, and I had wanted to expand on my last 5 minutes um, um, analysis that I did and actually examine the film in its entirety. But yeah, I ain't going down that rabbit hole. Not again. It's such a shame, but the kind of reception, the kind of attention you get from that is not attention you necessarily want unless you're looking for a bit of online argy bargy. Yeah, they do. Yeah, you know what? I was going to argue against that. But Kubrick is emotionally dislocated in his films, lack human warmth. Um, to an extent, yes. I'd say probably Clockwork Orange is actually the opposite of that. Um, there is a kind of warmth in it, but it's a very perverse warmth. Ty West has been making a career out of 90-minute films that feel a fuck ton longer. Fair enough. Opinion on 2010, I think it's an underrated film. I would say largely unnecessary, but not a bad film per se, but desperately unnecessary. I know, Arthur C. Clarke wrote a sequel, but again, pointless. No reason for it. That's just my opinion, obviously. Some people wanted the extra stuff and answers and stuff. I preferred it when there weren't those explicit answers. And that ties into this film to some extent. Are you going to get answers? Do you need answers, or is the journey of going through this sort of tortured mind um, the reward in its own right, or at least the ride? Some people are so worried about the destination they forget about the journey, or at least don't rate or value the journey. Oh yeah, absolutely. There's joy in Clockwork Orange, not a nice joy. It's twisted and odd ways of working you into it. Yes, yeah, it sort of drags you into a very dark place, a very unpleasant place. And it has to do that because it's about as much about kind of the nature of violence as it is the nature of right and wrong, free will. And because it's a POV story from Alex's POV, if it was repugnant, then if there was no joy in it, you'd miss the point of it. It's one of the things with any kind of storytelling is about going into places that you don't want to explore in real life. What are you doing here, sir? So that was the guy that she saw dead in the river, who's also the guy at the antique seller, in case you missed it. Kubrick perfected the art of getting paid a fortune not to make films. I'd like to have seen his output if he'd been behind his mortgage. Yeah, he had the luxury of being able to do films at his own pace. Very lucky guy in that respect. Did that help his films? That's arguable, but that's the way he did it. Lassie. Oh, these headphones, by the way, these are a set I got about 6 months ago. Zero latency, so I can actually watch films with cordless headphones. These things, they're really good. I got them so I could play Rocksmith. Funny enough, with headphones on. They were not cheap. Second hand, they were not cheap. Films are relevant to the era that they were made. Someone might look at Citizen Kane, The Godfather, Dawn of the Dead, and compare them to modern films that have benefited from what they did. Absolutely, yeah. Standing on the shoulders of giants to a great extent. There's very few directors that are utterly unique. Even one of the most unique directors that I can think of off the top of my head would be David Lynch. But even he has his influences. Even he borrows from places occasionally. But he does it with purpose. It all comes back to Rocksmith, it does. It's a great game. It's a shame what they've done to it now with this current edition. If you look at other films made in the past, yeah. So if Kubrick films, compare them to other films of that era, then you understand how groundbreaking they were. Yeah, I mean, I don't expect everyone to sort of like be kind of film historians and stuff, but studios do kind of, and some directors and writers rely on past glories and people not having been aware of them. I like it when people wear their heart on their sleeves when it comes to filmmaking, and when there are lifts and borrows, that it's done with respect and acknowledging really who made them. That's one of the only real kind of arguments for cameos that I can think of. Is it's like it's a nod to the past somewhat. Like directors who can bang out a film a year, full of Carpenter, Hawks, Kubrick, Cameron, just disappear for a decade at a time. Yes. I would rather have quality over quantity. It's one of the things you see these TV series and stuff like that, especially with the way that people watch them these days, binge watching and stuff like that, and they go, "Oh, it's been this series is finished. When's the next one coming out? Is it like 3 months' time?" It's like, no, it takes time to make these fucking things. Yeah, it's a bloody tense scene. And the character's so kind of like traumatized and worried about it. Is this her just losing her mind? And she's just letting this happen. There's one of the interesting dynamics of the character in this film is that she's as much worried about her own state of mind as she is other people finding out about that. I have to say, I kind of partly left this as background noise. Probably need two monitors. Yes, it helps having two monitors. I've got three, so. I mean, ideally, I would kind of minimise myself and have it playing on the screen, but obviously can't do that. See, that's actually quite a dangerous stunt, her running alongside that moving tractor. It doesn't look that showy, but that could be really, really dangerous. I got my health and safety hat on today. Those redheads, yes. Carpenter dropped off in the 90s, has given up at this point. They don't make execs who can okay projects anymore. Just accountants who deal in franchises and can't understand new ideas. Probably a little unnuanced to a point, but yes, it kind of boils down to stuff like that. Yeah, I appreciate both filmmaking styles. Roger Corman was an absolute legend, the opposite of Kubrick. Yeah, I mean, people make films in different ways for different reasons. A lot of Corman's output was basically about, kicking out films and making a bit of money, making a living, and it's fair enough. Although those films can be a great amount of fun. I think there's a lot of cynicism though when it comes to like major studios doing it. It's different when it's someone like Roger Corman, because they're basically trying to keep the lights on. The studios don't need to spend 500 million or a billion on a movie. Really, they shouldn't have to. Well, there you go. Yikes. I think you might have just fucked up. We had someone even halfway like Corman in France, but the last snow, no real filmmakers from where I'm from either. And I don't exactly live in a rural area. That surprises me, really. I mean, I've always imagined, like, kind of in any reasonably busy area, there's going to be some filmmakers. Just, is there an industry? And Corman was, a one-man industry. We all sort of circled back, haven't we? Yeah. So, that was Let's Scare Jessica to Death. I like that film. It's a very solid piece of storytelling with a wonderful point of view character. I think there's so much going on in that film. I think it's a very readable film, which is, kind of my thing. I love the fact that it's a psychological take. I love all that kind of delving into someone's mind and seeing the world through their eyes. And in that respect, it's a very, very full film. But, yeah. That synth cacophony I've heard before, I can't place it. It's similar to Anthropophagus. That was a weird one. It is a little bit of a weird one. But you're talking about, a story coming from the mind of someone who's very broken. Or potentially broken. Probably live in the worst city in France when it comes to cinema. Oh, no. Dear. I'm lucky. I know a couple of filmmakers along the way. John being one of them. They're around. You just got to find them. It just depends where you are. Obviously, the more metropolitan the kind of place you're in, then probably the better. But it doesn't stop you making films. There's so many ways to make films these days. It's not necessarily a big, expensive and prohibitive pursuit. Good psychological film. Enjoyed it. Yep. I am very, very tempted to review it at some point. I think it'll be interesting to sit down and write about it and figure out kind of how well aspects of the film work in a little bit more detail. Right now the movie is over. I've got the stream on the telly. Am I on your telly? How big is your telly? Is it big enough for my personality? That is the question. But yeah. But I hope you enjoyed that. I thought it was an unusual one to go for. We've obviously not done it before. Yeah, I'm always a little hesitant when it comes to bring your own media one, just because of accessibility apart from anything else. But I'm always interested in your thoughts on that as a format. Are you happy to do it? How much notice do you need for it, really? Because I know some of you might want to grab DVDs and Blu-rays. Kerry is often very keen to use physical media as opposed to streaming to watch along with these things. So kind of it's always worth letting me know, comment or whatever, how you feel about that. Maybe I'm just not cut out to be a filmmaker. You have to really, really, really want it, and you have to be really kind of pushing for it. People don't just fall into it. It's I can't say whether you are or whether you're not. I think the only person can answer that question is you. If you want to do it, you put every ounce of your effort into it. Start small. Doesn't have to be big. Start with a short. Look at a 15-minute thing with 2 people. Adopt the Dogma 95 rules. So your budgets are going to necessarily be low. You won't have to worry about much equipment. You can just photograph with a camera and a bunch of people. Although I wouldn't recommend necessarily, if there's a fight in your film, then it's got to be real. I think that was Von Trier being a bit of a douche. He has a strange sense of humour, that's that guy. Current bedroom telly was found outside a house with a piece of paper saying free TV. It works with the remote. It's huge, as wide as a single bed. Wow. Very good. Well, allow me to fill your TV screen. There you go. Beautiful. Puppy was farting all the way through. Got a 4D experience, which I would recommend. Oh dear. Puppy farts. Yes, absolutely. Right, okay, so we shall call it a day there then. Thank you for joining. I'm glad it seems like you all enjoyed that one, and now we'll keep an eye out for some other films which are a bit out of the wheelhouse. I know I've covered several films several times along the way. Let's see if we can find some interesting ones and get them up on the Ramblaholics, that kind of stuff. Or I would say in the descriptions, but YouTube doesn't notify me of comments and stuff. But yeah. So I will say for now, take it easy. Have a lovely rest of your weekend. I will probably not be streaming next weekend because I want to try to get some work done on the hardware review. See if I can get somewhere with that, which hopefully, if I've got the energy for it tomorrow, I will be doing a bit more of it then. But I am actually looking forward to doing something a little bit in depth on that one. So it might be a fairly long video. But for now, I shall say good night, have a good weekend, and we'll see you on the next stream. Thank you for joining.